Hey guys, welcome back. This is part 3 of Geologic History. Just wanted to quickly touch base on the last concept from part 2 before we get into sequencing. All right, we talked about relative age, which is basically putting things in order in relation to each other without knowing the specific age. So we don't know the specific age of any one of these three women here, but we can put them in age order from oldest to youngest or youngest to oldest just by comparing them to each other. All right, so that's relative age. And then we ended with absolute age, which is the real age, and we use things like carbon dating to get that. So that's where we left off. And now we're going to go into sequencing. This can be a little confusing, so I'm going to need you, if you are confused, to be sending questions in about the notes so that I can make another video explaining or answering your questions. Okay? So, first two things that we need to understand, all right, when we're talking about sequencing. So, basically, sequencing is we have a whole bunch of rock layers and things going on, and we're trying to put them in order. Okay. And we might be comparing two different areas to try and build up one sequence because some things may have happened in one that didn't happen in the other. So we're going to have to do comparisons. So the first thing to understand is the principle of superposition. All right. And all this basically means is unless I tell you otherwise, you always assume that the oldest rock layer is at the bottom, which makes sense. Okay. Unless you hear a word like overturning, okay, or uplift and overturn, all right, you will assume that the oldest rock layer is at the bottom. All right. Second thing, intrusions. So this is going to have to do with magma. So if magma pushes its way up through rocks, the magma must always be younger than the rocks that it went through. Okay. So that should make sense, and I'll show you a picture that hopefully will explain that a little better for you. Okay, so here we go. From this intrusion, we have something called contact metamorphism. All right, so an intrusion causes the rocks directly touching the magma or lava to turn into a metamorphic rock. Okay, so if we see here, this red was an igneous intrusion. Okay, it has since cooled off and turned into the rock gabbro, which is an igneous rock. But you see this yellow area here with all these dashes on either side. Okay, that's indicating contact metamorphism. So if I were to look at what rock layer C is, rock layer C is sandstone. All right, so I'd want to know what the metamorphic version of sandstone is, all right, which is going to be quartzite. And that means in this yellow area here and here in layer C, that's not sandstone anymore, that's going to be quartzite. Okay, and for limestone, it's going to turn into marble. So layer B with the bricks, when I look at the key here, this is limestone. So that means it's limestone out here, but where I get the yellow contact metamorphism, that's going to be marble. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. Now, as we're looking at this picture, a couple of things would come to mind that I want to point out. You'll see an intrusion. Okay, you'll always see the lines indicating contact metamorphism. Okay, so it always has to be younger than the layer it's in. So if I was looking at rock layers D, C, B, A, intrusion E, and we have this fault line that's not labeled, but a fault. If I were to put them in order, okay, D would be the oldest because it was at the bottom. Okay, then layer C, then layer B, then the intrusion came through. How do I know that the intrusion came through between B but before A? Well, you'll notice that the intrusion doesn't go up through layer A. So it would have already hardened. Okay, there's actually one other thing here that we're going to call an unconformity, and I'll show you that in a second. All right, so we can see that. All right. Then comes the fault. How do I know that that happened? Because again, the fault doesn't extend into layer A. So it only goes through layers B, C, D, and intrusion E, the gabbro intrusion or igneous intrusion. Okay. The unconformity, you see in between layers B and A, this line kind of waves up and down. Okay. That usually indicates that erosion took place. All right. So I don't know how many rock layers were there because they're gone. They've all been eroded away. Or maybe just a little teeny bit of B was worn away and then rock layer A settled. Okay. I don't know that. All right. Another thing to notice about the contact metamorphism, do you see those dashy lines up above? No, they're not there, which means that this had hardened well before this layer came down. All right. So again, D is the oldest, then C, then B, then intrusion E, then the fault, then this unconformity or erosion, and then layer A. All right. So that's how you would put them in order. Okay. Another thing that we look for when we're doing this is if there was volcanic ash. Okay, volcanic ash is usually going to be a thin layer but very widespread. Why? Well, because a volcano erupts once, spits the ash out, okay, and then you're going to get this layer. So if you look here, there's a dark gray line that's going through this rock. Well, that was deposited there when a volcano erupted, and that ash settled there on the ground, and it has since been squished down. So if we know that that volcano was there and it erupted in 1732, then I know that the rocks above the ash have to be younger than that. Okay? So we do look for volcanic ash as a way to figure out time. Okay. I'm going to come out of this, go into this to show you how to do one. Okay? So we have a couple of things going on here. So there are rock layers A, B, C. There's intrusion D. There's fault E. And there's one unconformity that we're going to address. Okay? So we need to put them in order from oldest to youngest. All right? So when I look at this, I said the oldest rock is always going to be on the bottom. Well, if I look at the right-hand side, B is at the bottom. But if I look at the left-hand side, C is at the bottom, and it's underneath B. Okay? So, let's see. Of course, the pen isn't working. Let me just get this out of the way. Turn this on. I'm going to go green. Don't know why my pen's not working. Gonna have to look into that. So either way, layer C has got to be the oldest in this picture because it's underneath B on the left. Okay? And then what's going to happen? Well, layer B is going to be next. So that would be layer 2. Okay? So what are my choices? I have layer A, I have intrusion D, I have fault line E, or I have the unconformity at the surface, which is the erosion. Okay? Kind of see how it wobbles all over the place. All right? So, well, the unconformity is all the way up top. So that had to happen, that's early. So I'm looking between A and D. Well, does D cut through layer A? It does. So that means layer A had to be there first. So layer A is our third layer. Okay? So we go C, B, A. All right. Then my next is, did the intrusion happen or did the fault happen? Well, the intrusion is cut in half, right? And it's slid apart. Well, can I cut something in half before it actually happened? No, it had to be there first. So my intrusion is number 4. Okay? Which means my fault that happened next, which goes all the way up to the surface, okay, is going to be number 5. And then right here, it's layer 6, and that's your unconformity. Okay? So hopefully that made sense. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll down, show you another picture. I'm going to ask that you pause the video while you try and figure out the order of what happened. Okay? So there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 rock layers. There's one intrusion, and then there's one erosion or unconformity. All right, so go ahead and pause the video and see if you can figure out the order in which it happened, and then I will come back and give you the answer. Okay, so pause now. Okay, welcome back. So hopefully you have the answer right on this. So remember I said that the oldest layer has to be at the bottom. Okay, so I have 2 rock layers that could be at the bottom. It could be P or it could be R. All right. Well, R cuts through many layers, so that's actually an intrusion. And remember, I said that an intrusion must be younger than the rock layers that it cuts through. All right. So that means P is my oldest, then K, then M, then S. Okay. Then layer X, then intrusion R. So P, K, M, S, X, R, then the erosion happens, erosion A, and then we go B, J, F. Okay, so hopefully you got that right. There's one or two other things that I should mention. If you see that these rock layers here, they're always going to be, there's another principle of original horizontality, which means that all rock layers will be deposited flat. Okay, so if you see them folded where they kind of curve like this, they were deposited flat first and then something came and folded them. If you see these layers tilted, so instead of one on top of another like this, they're at an angle. They were deposited first and then shifted to an angle. All right, so that's going to be tilting. Okay, so let's get back to our presentation. All right, can I show you how to do this one? Well, I just did, and you'll notice there's tilting here. All right, so again, if you want to try this, pause the video now and then come back in a second when you think you have the answer, and we'll go over the answer. Okay, so give it a pause now. Okay, welcome back. All right, now we're going to go over this. There's a bunch of stuff going on here. There's 2 intrusions. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 rock layers. There is a fault. There is an unconformity. Okay, so we have a lot going on in this one picture. So as I look at this, okay, why has this stopped working? That is annoying me. All right. So I'm looking towards the bottom, but what's the bottom? All right. Well, it could be layer K. Could be this intrusion H. Could be this intrusion J. Okay. Could be C because that's touching the bottom. Could be D because that's touching the bottom. All right. So how do I know? Well, it can't be D because C is underneath it. Okay. So you see that right there, which means it can't be C because K, which this is part of K out here, matches this, okay, is underneath C. All right. And H and J are my intrusions. So they had to happen uh, after the rock layers were there. So we're going to go layer K is the oldest. All right. And we're actually going to go K, C, D, E, F. All right. So all of those happen first. All right. And remember, we're talking about the principle of original horizontality. So they were actually up and down. They were not tilted like this. Okay. Then we have fault line L. Okay. So fault line L happened, and then the tilting happened. How do I know the tilting happened before intrusion H? Okay. Well, because intrusion H is not really tilted per se, it cuts through everything. All right. So K, C, D, E, F, fault line L, the tilting, then intrusion H, then intrusion J, then rock layer G. Then we're going to go with this unconformity that goes from the surface here underneath that A by that house and underneath this A. Okay, and then finally rock layer A is being deposited in those two dips in the ground. Okay, so hopefully you were able to do that. All right, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you, I believe, one or two more, and I'm going to put them on. Wait for a second, ask you to pause it and do them, and you'll wind up doing both of those, and then we'll come back in the next video to go over them and see how we did. So let's just take a look. Okay. It's actually 3, so let me move my ugly face out of the way. All right, so your first one is here. All right, so what I want you to do is I want you to take your time. You're going to pause the video, and you'll be able to look at this. So you know we're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 rock layers. 1, 2, 3 intrusions, 1 erosion, and that is about it. All right, so go ahead and pause and try and write this down. Put it in order from oldest to youngest. Okay, we're back, and let me go to the next one. All right, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 layers. I have a folding event. I have 1, 2 erosions that I have to account for in this. Okay, so pause this. All right, and you'll be able to get that. And then finally, I'll let you guys try and figure this one out. This one's going to be relatively hard. Relatively hard because the colors are not that great. They kind of mix together. So if you don't wind up getting this, that's okay. It's really not the greatest of pictures. All right, so we're going to stop there for sequencing. We're going to pick it up again in our next video, which will be part 4, which we will go over the answers to those 3. As a matter of fact, you know what? We're going to skip this one. So don't worry about this guy. Just do this one, and this one. Okay, so just do those two, and then we will just talk to you guys later. All right, thanks. Talk to you soon.